But in the Daily Wire, the FBI in the 2020 election meddling takes the center stage as Christopher Wray, he's the director of the FBI, readies his Senate testimony. FBI Director Christopher Wray is expected to testify in front of the Senate on Thursday as he leads an agency battered by controversy and whistleblower allegations that the Bureau's work is deeply tainted by politics. You think? Some of the most pertinent questions Wray is expected to field involve allegations that high-up officials in the FBI meddled in the 2020 election, from covering up incriminating information about Joe Biden's family to overemphasizing the threat of domestic terrorism. In other words, in 2020, the FBI covered up Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's brother. They covered up their business dealings and their use of the federal government to enrich themselves and their connections from the federal government and from these elected officials. And at the same time in 2020, I'm not sure if you recall, the FBI decided that people who belong to patriot organizations and or patriotic organizations or militias were by definition domestic terrorists or suspected domestic terrorists. And this is how they tried to, the FBI, they had their hands on this election trying to convince people that individuals who thought that the federal government was too powerful and too strong, which of course it is, and too overbearing, which of course it is, and too in control of our daily lives, which it is, those individuals are a threat. So Wray took over as the head of the FBI in August 2017 after the firing of Director James Comey, whose legacy was marred by the FBI's handling of investigations of both of the major candidates in the 2016 presidential election. As FBI head, Wray said institutional reform is a priority. The FBI is dedicated to cleaning out internal bad actors and erecting safeguards to prevent a repeat of the failings of 2016, he told the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. In other words, the FBI has acknowledged that in 2016, they were actually spying, or some of their agents were at the very high level of the FBI, spying on the Trump campaign. So they're acknowledging it. It's like a secret service agency, if you will, that is, the secret police going around and spying on politicians to try to determine the outcome of an election. Accounts from whistleblowers and others suggest Wray has fallen short on his pledge to protect the FBI's credibility. Senate Judiciary Committee ranking member Chuck Grassley, who's a Republican from Iowa, sent a letter to Wray and Attorney General Merrick Garland last month, detailing whistleblower allegations that the FBI wrongly and duplicitously classified potentially damning information about Hunter Biden, the president's son. And they classified that information as disinformation. That is to say, they knew Hunter Biden was corrupt and is corrupt, and that Joe Biden is corrupt, and Joe Biden's brother is corrupt. They've all gotten wealthy from government. Doesn't seem possible, but they have. And, by doesn't seem possible, I mean, it doesn't seem possible that someone could continue so long in government and not be caught and charged and then arrested. But the FBI has looked the other way and said, no, all that stuff that you gave us that proves that this was happening, it was really Russian disinformation. And so in April, a West Virginia jury acquitted 2 men and hung on charges against 2 others that federal prosecutors alleged to have conspired to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And so there are also questions about this, right? Because the FBI was engaged in this particular event as well. So this matters, ladies and gentlemen, because today, it's not just that Christopher Wray is in front of the United States Congress testifying. It's also that in today's newspaper, in the New York Post, at the same time Christopher Wray is testifying, there is a front page article. Hunter Biden was involved in a 2018 deal to send grain from the Ukraine to China. So there we go again. The Ukraine is in the news, not because of this mysterious war between Russia and the Ukraine, and between, obviously, the United States is involved heavily in this as well by providing indirectly and directly technical support and weapons. And in the New York Post, Hunter Biden was involved in the 2018 deal to send grain from the Ukraine to China. So it says Hunter Biden was involved in 2018 in a project by Burisma Holdings to export grain from the Ukraine to China, a document from his abandoned laptop shows, right? So it's from his laptop. The scandal scarred the first son's signature, was among those on a Burisma board resolution dated July 27th, 2018. His signature that concerned the Sino-Ukrainian Silk Road grain port project. In addition to Hunter, 7 other members of Burisma's board of directors authorized their advisor, Vadim Pozarsky, to represent with all Chinese potential shareholders for development, negotiation, and contracting issues, as well as operation management of the project Sinot-Ukraine Silk Road grain port. Former CIA officer Joseph Coffer Black, a fellow Burisma board member, was also among those who signed off on the project, the document shows. So think about this. Hunter Biden is a drug addict and a complete loser, okay? He has been for his adult life, his entire adult life. And here he is, by some miracle, doing a grain deal between the Ukraine and China in 2018. A drug dealer, okay? Now, why on earth do you think Hunter Biden is able to do a grain deal between the Ukraine and China when he's a drug addict? Maybe because his last name is Biden. And then there's a CIA guy that's involved as well that was part of the board of Burisma. In addition to Hunter, 7 other members of Burisma's board of directors authorized their advisor, Vadim Pozarsky, to represent with all Chinese potential shareholders for the development and negotiation and containing this, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no further mention of the project on Hunter's laptop, and it wasn't really immediately clear if the grain was ever shipped. Yeah, so was he actually paid for it then? The revelation of Hunter's ties to the venture came a month after his father's administration accused China of stockpiling wheat amid a global food crisis fueled by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, look, folks, think about this for a moment. Hunter was involved in a grain deal between the Ukraine and China. China, and that's 2018, China then mysteriously stockpiles wheat and grain that came from the Ukraine. Then, by some happenstance, Russia invades the Ukraine. And you don't think for 1 minute the United States of America isn't somehow involved in this? Or people at the very highest levels? And that the FBI with Christopher Wray, who's now, of course, the head of the FBI and is in front of the United States Congress testifying, shouldn't he be asked all these questions? Like, at what point did the FBI, not investigate this and charge these corrupt people? President Biden had predicted in March that the war would upend global wheat supplies since Russia and the Ukraine jointly account for about a fourth of the world's wheat exports, ladies and gentlemen. Hunter stepped down from the Burisma board in April of 2019. The same month, he abandoned his laptop in the Delaware repair shop because he said he didn't want to distract from his father's presidential bid, right? It's like, yeah, I don't want dad to really know, and I don't want the press to know or the voters to know what I've been doing, all this corrupt stuff. So I'm going to drop my laptop off to this repair shop in Delaware so that they can repair it. So that presumably I can then erase everything that's on it. I mean, this is when you know that you're dealing with a complete and utter drugged out drug addict and loser, because if he had a brain, what he would do is he would shred the laptop, right? He would just shred it. Why would you even try to repair it? You'd shred it. But he probably has a lot of important documents on the laptop from his other corrupt business dealings, so he needed to retrieve them, And the FBI, of course, allegedly has had this laptop for years and has done nothing. Done nothing. The New York Post examination, that is, of the infamous laptop has since exposed how a myriad of Hunter's foreign business dealings unfolded with his father when his father was Barack Obama's vice president. Interesting. The dealings, which President Biden has repeatedly denied any knowledge of, are almost certainly part of the ongoing Justice Department's probe into Hunter, which has reportedly reached a critical stage. Oh, sure. Pozharskyi, the advisor referenced in the China-Ukraine grain deal, is the same guy who sent Hunter an email thanking him for introducing him to then Vice President Biden in Washington in April of 2015. Additional documents uncovered from the laptop shows that Pozharskyi had been invited to a dinner arranged by Hunter so that Biden could meet his overseas business partners from the Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan. Folks, this was happening when Biden was vice president under Obama. They were enriching themselves on grain deals and other kinds of deals in the Ukraine and with the Ukraine while Biden was vice president. And then, miraculously, Russia invades the Ukraine after China stockpiles a bunch of wheat from the Ukraine. It's really, I'm not saying that I have the answers as to how all this went down. What I'm saying to you is we have some serious corruption at the very highest levels of our government. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, But the problem is the law enforcement agencies aren't doing their jobs. And is it because the CIA was involved in all of this too? Were high-ranking CIA officials involved in this, and were they using Hunter Biden to try to get some intel, and so therefore Hunter is a useful idiot and therefore shouldn't be charged? Nonsense. I mean, let's just say that's somehow true. It's still nonsense. Since when do you use a vice president's son to try to get information? Additional documents uncovered by the laptop show that Pozharskyi had been invited to a dinner arranged by Hunter, introducing him to, of course, VP Biden. The Biden administration categorically denied meeting between Biden and Pozharskyi at a swanky Cafe Milano that took place at the Post after the Post reported it in October of 2020. Dad will be there, but keep that between us for now. Thanks, Hunter emailed one guest 3 weeks before the dinner. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. You have Christopher Wray, the FBI director, in front of the United States Congress, testifying about why the FBI is asleep on this particular matter. Meanwhile, we are very close to war, of course, with Russia, because we are supporting the Ukraine. This is a proxy war at a minimum from the United States of America in the Ukraine. And Russia is directly engaged, obviously, in war in the Ukraine. And you have to ask yourself the question, was all of this planned? Is it just really happenstance, since we've been involved with the Ukraine via Biden and probably Obama since the Obamas were in charge of the White House and president of the United States? According to documents on the laptop, President Biden met with at least a dozen of Hunter's business partners, including in China, when Biden flew with his son to Beijing aboard Air Force Two in 2013. The purpose of Biden's trip was an official vice presidential visit with the newly elevated President Xi Jinping, because that's when Xi became president of China. Biden has been accused of going soft on China amid his son's ongoing scandals, and more recently, ahead of the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. The president urged Pelosi to cancel her trip, insisting that the military thinks it's not a good idea right now. So, look, we know that President Biden and Hunter Biden are compromised. We know that President Biden's brother is compromised. But really the most important thing in this story, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have our intelligence agencies, or certainly certain individuals in those agencies, that are engaging in some corrupt practices. And we have, at the same time, the FBI that is engaging in corrupt activities and are wanting to put their finger on the scale of elections by not going after individuals like Hunter who have clearly broken the law. And we still don't have all of the information. Like, you've got the New York Post, probably Fox News, maybe a few other news outlets, obviously many, many podcasts, but the mainstream media, they are silent on this. And how do you ever get a clean government? How do you ever clean up government if you don't have a media that is even remotely interested in reporting and asking kind of like the basic questions, which is, why would a drug addict who's the son of the vice president and then the son of the president be involved in the Ukraine for so many years, where there is now a major war going on? How did all that come about? We need to continue to ask these questions, and we need to continue to push back on our all-powerful and out-of-control federal government and the out-of-control federal agencies and the out-of-control and power-hungry corrupt members, not all of the members, but certain of those individuals at the FBI. And I want to make that distinction, okay? The FBI employs many, many people. There are many, many good men and women there. But unfortunately, it sure seems like the worst group of people at the FBI are at the highest levels and have been for far too long. And I don't know how you get rid of those individuals or go after them and prosecute them and so forth. I'm not sure how that is fixed, other than oversight from the United States Congress with Christopher Wray in there. I mean, that's probably the primary way. But unless you have a media that's even remotely interested in reporting it, it won't ever get fixed, because no one ever knows it's actually happening.